Advice on tactics and how to catch more fish are the most common requests we get from listeners to Ireland on the Fly. And so this year we're delighted to bring you our new monthly Masterclass live webinars.
Some of the most experienced and respected fly anglers from around the country will pass on their in-depth knowledge and expertise in a live Zoom webinar where you will get to ask the questions and get the answers that you've always wanted to know.
So, starting with our first Masterclass live webinar on Thursday, March 14th, international angler and lock carb expert Mike Keady will be explaining early season buzzer tactics.
What's the setup, what flies to use, and how to maximize your catch rates. All of this and more, Mike Keady will be explaining.
Plus, he will then be answering your questions live during the webinar.
And if that's not enough, every attendee will get a copy of Mike's detailed notes and have exclusive access to the recording of the webinar afterwards.
And for all of this, tickets to the webinar are just €10. To attend, you must register and pay in advance by going to irelandonthefly.com/masterclass.
Stay tuned for our masterclasses throughout 2024. We'll be covering salmon, rivers, lochs, streamers, lures, and dries. Everything to make you a better salmon or trout fly angler, helping you to catch more this year and to learn from the best.
Don't forget the date and details. Thursday, March 14th with Mike Keady on early season buzzer tactics. Register and pay for your ticket at irelandonthefly.com/masterclass, and we can't wait to see you then.
The way I was taught was on the wet flies and the black water, which are big 11-foot, 6-7 weight rod, and your 4 flies on, black pinnels and black and silvers and greenwell spiders and spider patterns, any of those, and we caught fish and plenty of them. There was great wet fly fishermen in the black water. Some of the best wet fly fishermen in the world came off the black water. And I was lucky enough to kind of grow up with some of those older guys, the Willises and Malinow and John Hart, the Nelligans and Fermoy. They were great wet fly fishermen.
Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. For this week's episode, we're joined by Dave O'Donovan, a Cork-based international angler who loves nothing better than fishing his local Awbeg River. So with most of the rivers in Cork and Kerry open for trout from February 15th, we spoke to Dave about fishing in the early season and why wet fly tactics are a particular favourite. But first, Tom, Carb is also opening on the 15th, so what's it like?
Look, it's great. It doesn't be long coming around, but here it is again now. Actually, don't know if I'm going to get out myself now on Thursday. Today, if you're listening straight away. But just getting over a bad dose, so I'll see how it goes. Hopefully I will. It'd be nice to get out. But there'll be a few going out here, but it's it's the anticipation. It's a bit like when we're chatting to Dave there. That's what it's all about. It's the anticipation. It's the opening day. You can go fishing again.
It's the hardy brave souls you kind of venture out, is it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, to be honest, here with us, you'll get lads go out opening day and they won't go out again for 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, it's just a matter of getting out. Now, sometimes you can have great fishing. We've discussed this before. Remember before when we did a couple of things about early season fishing on Cork. You can get really good fishing, but you can get flummoxed as well. So it's really weather dependent. It's shorter days. When it goes cold, it stays cold. It doesn't warm up. It is what it is. And I think the main thing about it there is just that you're able to go out fishing. So yeah, hey, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's funny, even speaking to Conor Arnold last week, we spoke to Neil on the Quran, Shane Gallagher on the Drowse, and it's great catching up with all these people, just getting that kind of sense of, look, it's opening around the country and it's opening up, and we might do one on the shore, actually opening up in Patrick's as well.
I think we really should, and we were just discussing that before, and it was why is the shore is the 17th, and the Awbeg and the Cork rivers that we're chatting to Dave about at the 15th, but we've been through that before, the discrepancies on opening and closing dates throughout the country, and there was obviously reasons for these being brought in, but they are what they are.
Did we get to the bottom of that? Why the shore is Paddy's Day?
No.
Answers on a postcard, please.
Yeah. Actually would like that. Yeah.
If we do the episode on the shore, we'll ask. But if anybody else knows, do let us know. This is a really interesting episode, this one, I think, as well, speaking to Dave, because he goes a lot into wet fly tactics, which is kind of not necessarily a forgotten art, but nymphing's kind of taken over to a certain extent. But he really extols why wet fly is so good and should really, be in vogue and used at the start of the season.
It's really interesting to hear Dave talking about it. I mean, like Dave is good at all aspects, and be it as he says, dry dropper, dries, which he loves, and nymphing. But he hasn't forgotten what wets are like either, and it's really interesting to hear him and get an insight into the tactics of it, because it's almost as you say, it's almost become like it's almost a forgotten method, and to hear him talk about it, just realizes, it's far from it. It's far from it. I mean, like after listening to him, it was great. And funny, you were saying this as well. You only realized how close the Funcheon was to you. It's not that distance at all, not that far at all from you. But after listening to him, you really it really got a bit of a splurt on. God, I'd love to give on the rivers a go, and just as he says, to searching them out. And it's very interesting to hear him say, and it's very true. It's the way you work the flies. He's working the flies, and to be honest with you, it happens too in wet fly fishing from a boat. People sometimes poo-poo it that it's just chucking and pulling. It's not always the same. No, and I think probably more so in a river, there's more working of it. But don't discount it that you can do it in wets in a boat as well.
True. And especially early season for the rivers. And I think, and I've been guilty of it as well, as you get a bit obsessed with the nymphing. You have your setup and, whereas, maybe just, it's a more relaxed style of fishing as well. And I think it's nice, maybe even just you're easing yourself into the season. It's a good time year to do it. Yeah, I'm going to definitely focus on it a bit more now, I think, in the opening weeks and months. It
was great, and for anybody who's interested in doing it, and, and anglers out there who probably mightn't have done much of it, Dave gives a good insight, a good how-to, should we say, on how you get about and what to use, make up your leader, your cast, what line to use. It's really good. You shouldn't be in any doubt that you're doing things right if you go out and give it a go.
So if you're in Cork or Kerry, now's the time, or if you're in Tipperary, you can cross the border. But look, let's get back to this week's episode, and let's hear from Dave O'Donovan, who outlined what we can expect on the Munster rivers that are opening on 15th of February.
We open on the 15th of February on the Munster Blackwater and its tributaries. The shore, which is only about maybe 45-minute drive from me, they open on St. Patrick's Day. So they're a little bit later. So a lot of the Tipperary lads come down to my neck of the woods there for the first month of the season. So, just maybe 7 or 8 of those guys that would come down. So we kind of have to pick and choose where we're going to go to try and all get a good spot. But I normally tend to go to the Funcheon River. It's about 4 miles from my house, and it is prolific. It is, I fished all over the world, and I would have to say the Funcheon River would be up there with any river for wild fish anywhere in the world. I mean, I'd be expecting any day, you're going to get. You could, if you want to stay out all day, you'll catch fish all day. You'll catch 40, 50, 60 fish if you stay out for the whole day. It's that good. Now, again, they'd be 8 inches. I know you West of Ireland guys, like your big 14 to the V. But, those 20 centimeter trout are competition size fish. They're the ones we're after. We don't really mind as long as they're over that side, that with the magical 20 centimeters, we're happy.
Maybe just give us an overview of the Funcheon. People don't know, where is it? Where's it flow from to? What size is it? What's the towns it goes through? The villages?
Yeah, it's you'd pass it going to Killarney from the Dublin side. It's between Mitchelstown and Mallow. Well, it would be closer to Mitchelstown, about 7 miles outside Mitchelstown. But it flows down from the Galties, down through Mitchelstown, down through Glanmort, onto Kilworth, and it enters the Funcheon then downstream of Fermoy.
It's downstream of Fermoy, attention.
Yeah, downstream of Fermoy, not just above Carysville. If you're familiar with Carysville, famous Carysville water, the Blackwater. Yeah, it enters the Blackwater maybe only about a mile upriver of Carysville.
And how wide is it? How big of a river is it?
Oh, it's small. It's not very long either. It's very windy kind of a river. It's only about maybe 15 meters wide. It's not that wide. You'd wade it at ease. With body waders, you'd wade it probably in any stretch of it. Really, has a few deep holes here and there, but it's all wadable. Great dry fly river, great nymphing river. It's just one of those all round rivers. But again, it floods very easy. It could flood overnight, but it goes down fast. That's the beauty of the Funcheon. All the other rivers could be flooded, but you could go there the next day after very heavy rain, and within 5 or 6 hours you'll get fishing. It's great that way. But again, we have other rivers. We got my local Awbeg River, which flows through, again, enters the Blackwater in Castletown Roach. Flows from Doneraile, Butterfont. Comes from the Charleville side. It's comes from a complete different area than the Funcheon would, but it's a limestone river, very clear river. A tough river, very tough. Like we always say, if you can catch trout in the Awbeg, you can catch them anywhere. And I grew up on the Awbeg, so maybe that helped me in my youth to try and be, just tough fishing. Just had to get.
I always remember you saying that, Dave, about the Awbeg. Where are you based now? Where's your local place? Town?
Yeah, I'm from a little village called Shanballymore.
No.
Tiny little village between Mallow and Mitchelstown. The Awbeg River would be maybe a mile from my house. Very overgrown. I love it because no one ever goes fishing there. It's very tough. But I mean, you wouldn't get it. Mm-hmm.
It's not as big as the Funcheon, is it?
It would be equal, about the same.
Okay.
The same. Yeah. It's a colder river. It's a very spring river. It's a spring river. It gets full of ranunculus in the summertime. It gets very difficult. Whereas the Funcheon, the Blackwater, the Bride River outside from they'd be cleaner rivers. They'd be friendlier to the fishermen.
Right.
And again, full of fish. Yeah.
But you're about the Awbeg there. There's a lot of potential for leaving flies in bushes, is there?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. You can say that. Well, we held the Munster Master Championships, the over 50s. I qualified for that last year.
I don't believe.
Yeah, we held it on
I refuse to believe you're fishing the Masters, Dave.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah, we held it on the Awbeg. It was we were honoured to hold it on the Awbeg River because it's not good enough river to hold major championships. So the Masters with smaller numbers, only 18 people fished it. So we saw the opportunity for the Awbeg to hold, what is a major Irish competition. There's a world Masters now. So, and we held the All Ireland on it, in the interprovincials on it as well. So it worked. It was fine. We held it kind of half on the Awbeg and half on the Blackwater. And we got results. There was an 18 taken off the Awbeg. So, and a 16. So there was numbers caught in 3 hours. That wasn't so bad.
And what about the Bride River as well, Dave? That's near you, is it?
Yeah, we got two Bride rivers in Cork. One we call one the Cork City Bride and one East Cork Bride. A great river, fantastic river. It flows Rathcormac. If you're on the Cork Dublin Road, you'll go over just outside Rathcormac.
Yeah.
And it flows into the tidal water down in Tallow. So yeah, great river. Great. Gets a few sea trout down in the lower end. Salmon run it again, but mostly on the lower end, the tidal section of it. But I think the Connacht Club are on it as well, and they're going to run the Masters there this year. So we'll wait and see if it compares to the Awbeg.
But of all the rivers around you there, Dave, you're saying the Funcheon is the one you'd start off with in February the 15th opening day, and is that where you'd head?
Yeah, I would, and even on the 15th of February, dry flies will come into play. There'll be hatches of olives, and it could be snowing. There will be a hatch. There's a couple of particular places that I will know that, there'll be a few olives hatching off, and trout will come up, around 2:00 when it might warm up a little bit. But it will be mostly nymphing.
Well, but that's amazing. You're virtually sure that you'll see a couple of olives hatching on the 15th of February.
Oh, you will, yeah, yeah. Oh God, I mean, I've gone out Christmas week. Now and again, I might do a little bit of pike fishing, and I know one or two places on the Funcheon that will hold a pike,
Yeah.
and you will see trout rising. You just do flats now. What we call deeper, slower water. We call them flats. You'll see the olives coming down there Christmas week, no problem, and fish coming in, trout rising. Yeah.
So you'd have no fear at all on the 15th of going at them or having your dries ready to have a go at them with the dries.
Oh, I will. I will do it. Just, I mean, you won't catch as many as you will nymphing, but I'll do it for traditional purposes, just to say a couple on a dry fly in the opening day.
Do you get many visiting anglers? Like, is the word out yet? It might be after this episode. This would be like Brian Hope and the Carramore. But like, is it mainly locals in the know? And apart from a few Tipperary lads, maybe.
Well, believe it or not, it's a dying trade down here. The fishing is getting, it's not very popular anymore. I mean, my local club, we got about 7 anglers, and 2, there might only be 4 of those active. It's very poor. There's not a big town clubs around here. They just don't have them. They're just the youth aren't there anymore. I mean, the town of Fermoy hasn't produced one youth to go to Munster Championships or anything like that. They're just dying trade, unfortunately. And we're trying, in fairness now, Munster Council, I think, are trying to put something together to get the youth going for the coming year. They're putting there's a committee after being put together, and they're going to make a big push. And I have every faith in them. There's a few good lads there, and I'll help you out. I don't know what it is, but I think they're going to make a big effort.
Whatever about salmon fishing, you know what I mean? That you can understand maybe, it's so hard to be catching fish and getting the youth maybe into salmon fishing. But, the numbers of trout in the Funcheon and these rivers hasn't declined, Dave. Sure it hasn't.
Oh, God, no. I mean, I think myself, the trout fishing has improved down through the years. The salmon are gone. Salmon fishing is very bad, but the trout fishing, I don't know. Maybe it's because the anglers are definitely getting better too. I mean, the competition fishermen are catching a lot of fish, and I mean, catch and release is fantastic. I mean, catch and release now. I mean, everything is, up to a point is catch and release down here now. There's no one. I don't know of anyone killing trout. That's not the reason why all the trout are there either, but it's just trout numbers are high. I think they are. Anyway. Maybe other fellas will disagree with me, but I mean, any day you go to a river and you can catch 40, 50 trout, they might be big, but their shoals have been front of you.
What about the hatches of flies? I've heard lads on the shore complaining about saying the hatches of flies are not what they were.
Oh yeah, the shore really took a hit on hatches. The shore would probably be my favorite river to fish. The Funcheon would be my favorite river because it's very close to me, and it's always fishable. As I said about the water ice, the shore can be a little bit. It can be very high and very tricky to fish, but what a river, fantastic river. But you're right, the sedge hatches, the mayfly hatch, they used to get a great alder hatch years ago. That seems to be gone now. But the water temperature, I believe, is the cause of that too. I think there's mines on the river upstream of Cashel. I think there's some mines up there, and they're creating cold water environment coming down the river. I'm not up to speed exactly, but I think the water temperature is after dropping a lot. So I'd say, but yeah, the fly life, we always have olives here on the Funcheon, the Awbeg, the black water. They'd be the main, and our sedge hatch seems to be poor, or definitely dropping. Yeah. We had, we started off evening fishing. The evening time you go when the sedges are on. I mean, they'd be all over your clothes and all over you get back to your car and you'd be after leaving the window open. They'd be in the car. They'd be everywhere. Yeah. But you wouldn't see it. Your sedges are gone way back. Yeah.
I do my salmon fishing, Dave, on the Blackwater, but I actually went down there for a trout fishing session once, and my God, I was blown away by the trout fishing, the trout size of the trout we were catching, and just the numbers of trout. And it's amazing. You don't think of it, because I'd always been like,
Yeah.
Blackwater, the salmon. It's a great, and it's kind of underappreciated, the Blackwater, isn't it, for trout?
Oh my God, yeah. Well, whereabouts were you? Do you mind me asking? Or you high up in it or
I
down low?
think it might have been Killavullen.
Oh, Killavullen, yeah. It's only 6-7 miles from me. Yeah. Oh well, that's Killavullen is great. There's great trout fishing in Killavullen. Yeah, it's great trout fishing. The Blackwater, traditionally, again, the 15th of February, we'd always have competitions back in the day. We don't really have as many now, but it was a wet fly. It's a wet fly river. You wouldn't be fishing too many dries at hardly ever, except, a few, there's always a few, but it's traditionally a wet fly river. It's the old style. The way I was taught was on the wet flies and the Blackwater, which are big 11-foot, 6-7 weight rod, and your 4 flies on, black pinnels and black and silvers and greenwell spiders and, spider patterns, any of those, and, we caught fish and plenty of them. And there was great wet fly fishermen in the Blackwater. Some of the best wet fly fishermen in the world came off the Blackwater, and I was lucky enough to kind of grow up with some of those older guys, the Willises and Malinow and John Hart, the Nelligans and Fermoy. They were great wet fly fishermen. And as I said, I was lucky enough to wet fly fish, but then I went on to nymphs, and they kind of, they didn't all see eye to eye with the nymphing, but in fairness, now, every man for his own.
I call nymphs the lob here after George McGrath, because that's what he calls them. But I was listening to you chatting to George McGrath there the time you were on with them, and it's very interesting because I love to hear talk about the wet flies in the river and like how it was kind of left behind. But you quoted something, or you brought up some numbers from the Thomastown competition. So you were talking to George, I think it was 2020, something around then, and it was, you brought up like the Thomastown competition, and bear in mind this is catch and release as well, guys. But there was about 4,000 fish caught, and you were making out by what you were talking to guys that you reckoned up on 1,200 to 1,500 fish were caught on the wet flies. So almost as if there was a bit of a resurgence to it.
There was. It was just the way the river went. And a guy, because I love my wet fly fishing, and the Nore in Thomastown is a big wide river, and when you're looking for 8-inch fish, wet flies are fantastic. And of course, it's a 2-man team. So I was on wet flies, and I fished with Peter Driver. So if I find out where they are with the wet flies, Peter goes in behind me with the nymphs, and between the two of us, we can get a lot of fish. But we were doing that in practice, and there's plenty of other good wet fly fishermen out there, don't get me wrong, but on that particular day, spiders, the trout just went bananas. Now, again, that day, believe it or not, it was an all-fish competition.
Right.
No matter what size they were counted, because it was just, I think the river was very low and the oxygen levels were low, and we didn't want to put stress on the fish, bringing them in, getting them measured, releasing them. So we said the fairest way to do it, I think it was COVID as well. We didn't want to be coming into the controllers with the fish. So it was just a case of net the fish, look over your controller, and he'll pot it, and you put the fish back. So we didn't have to go in and out with fish, saved a lot of time. So there was, I think Darius and Marius and these guys, they were getting 100 fish in 3 hours.
It was phenomenal.
100, Yeah.
That's very interesting, that tactic you were doing, though, with Peter.
Again, when you get two fellas that, myself and Peter have been around the block, we know, we work well together, and you get lots of good teams. There's some unbelievable teams that go to Thomastown, and two good guys that know what they're doing, that they gel, and, they can catch a lot of fish. Myself and Peter, I think, at 80, and we were only third or fourth with 80.
Right, you still did well.
So you need a lot of...
I'm going to say something to you now, and it's like you're back at school. Okay, the wet fly method is just pure chuck and chance. Anybody could do it. Discuss.
No, can't agree with you, Tom. That's like going up. That's like going up to the west of Ireland now with a couple of buzzers or a couple of dialbacks or whatever, and just chuck them in and sit back and relax and wait for the pool. No, wet fly fishing there's an art to wet fly fishing. Thank God the young fellas don't know it. It's the only thing I have up my sleeve now, and there's a lot of these young fellas nymphing. They're brilliant nymphers.
But it's probably right. A lot of them wouldn't have wet fly fished, Dave, would they?
I know international anglers. They can't throw a fly. All they can do is throw nymphs. These are good international anglers, and I've seen them abroad. I know one guy in Slovenia. He came over here to Ireland on a holiday. He was one of the top Slovenian fishermen, and I took him down to Killarney one day out in the boat. And all he could do was drop nymphs out over the side of the boat. He could not cast. I mean, yeah. So this is what you're dealing with sometimes. But
you're talking there. So do you still use an 11-foot rod and 4 flies when you're at it?
Well, yeah, but like if I was say if I keep going back to competitions, but I have I use a 10-foot 5-weight because it can be an all-round rod as well, and a 10-foot 5-weight is fine, it is. But if I was going out, and that will cover if if the river gets high and I might put on a stream or something like that, it will cover. A 10-foot 5-weight would be fine.
And do you fish 3 or 4 all the time?
3. I wouldn't fish 4. No, it's allowed. It's allowed in Killarney, on the lake, on the boats. But no, 3 would be my number one goal. Yeah.
And one question I genuinely know, because I did it years ago. I used to fish the rivers a little bit, but I haven't done it for ages. Do you use a floater line or do you use an intermediate or a midge tip? What's your favourite?
Kelly Green.
Using a midge tip. I found it my favourite. Kelly Green.
Yeah, Kelly Green. Yeah, it's like we tend to do it mostly in the springtime. Whereas nowadays, I remember when we were young, we were always brought up, once May comes, that's it. The daytime fishing is finished. It's all evening fishing. You go fishing at 7 o'clock in the evening till dark. And then maybe come September, you might get the daytime fishing back again. So we were always using sinking lines. I mean, we didn't dry fly fish at all. I didn't learn how to dry fly fish until I met a good friend of mine, Shawnee Dennehy. He was a function man, but he was living on the not far from the Bride either, or sorry, the shore, which would be a world-renowned dry fly river.
And did he introduce you to the dries?
Yeah, I was like, Shawnee was after winning lots of All-Ireland championships and Munster championships, and I was on the river one night. I could see him in the distance. I said, Jesus, I have to go over and ask this guy, would he mind if I watch him? And I got myself together and I went up, and I was only about 24 or 5. I wasn't doing much. I wasn't competition fishing at all, but I just got the gall up and I said, I bite the bullet now. And I went over and I asked him, would he mind teaching me how to dry fly fish? And we hit it off, and we were best of mates for 25 years, and we went everywhere together. And Shawnee was a fantastic fisherman. He was a few years older than me, but he was always wanting to learn. When nymphing came around, Shawnee was, he was one of the guys that took to nymphing. He was, he didn't care how you caught fish as long as you can catch fish. He just, as long as there was a fish on the end of the rod.
Tell me about the wet fly setup then, Dave, for people that are kind of curious maybe, and the kind of conditions they use. You were saying springtime is when you'd normally do it.
Yeah, springtime, fast streamy water, not so much, but the tail, the glides, flat water, and especially the flat water if you get a wind. If you get a wind on the flats, it kind of drowns the natural fly life, and it can be prolific. It just really gets the fish going. But even on the smaller rivers, the Funcheon, the Awbeg, the Bride, if you need to get into the flats, the slower water, whereas the fish aren't lying in the fast water in the springtime. They just don't tend to, they move into the faster water as the temperatures heat up and stuff like that. So, but again, I'd have just probably my Kelly Green. I'd have my 10-foot 5-weight, 3 flies, maybe 5 feet apart, 4-pound mono, probably 4-pound Drennan or something like that. You could even go 5, but it doesn't, like, you don't have to go very light. For some reason, they don't mind, you know. And plus, you're going to be hooked lots of trees, as Tom said there earlier on, so you're going to need to have something with a bit of strength. But yeah, you don't have to go down to these 7Xs, you know, like you do when you're nymphing. There's no need.
What flies, Dave?
Yeah, Greenwell spiders, partridges. I'm a partridge fan. You know, like anything small and black is good.
Snipe and purple?
Snipe and purple. Oh, yeah, snipe and purple. Yeah, when there's a hatch of iron blues, if you get a good iron blue hatch, you still get a reasonably good patch of iron blues. Funcheon Great River for the iron blues, parts of the shore, but a snipe and purple, yeah, very good. Kind of lift the rod every couple of seconds. Just give the flies a little bit of life. Make them look as if they're, you know, just coming to the surface or dropping off or something like that. But you know, you'll learn the telltale signs of where the fish are, and again, experience tells you where they are as well. But mostly the tail of heavy streams. That's where the better trout will tend to lie. And behind, like, if you get an overhanging bush, that's a great place, you know, to always, you know, a bush that's hanging into the river, there's always going to be insects and terrestrials falling off. So always cast behind a bush that's hanging into the water, you know, it can be one of the better spots as well, yeah.
Is it a good for kind of maybe people starting out? You know, it's a good way to introduce them to trout fishing on rivers, you know, because once they can get a bit of line out, you know, there's not having to kind of manage the line too much compared to nymphing, you know, and it's obviously easier to spot the take then.
It is. It's actually very good because you can just let it swing and let it hang down below you. And, you know, you're always going to get smaller fish, you know, even... You know, salmon Powell hit it. If you're taking out a younger person that wants to just catch a fish, put on 2 little wet flies. If you only feed the line out of the line, you know, if they're standing in the water, you know, knee deep, just feed the line out. You know, anything up to the month of May, you're going to get little fish that are, you know, they're recovering after the winter and they're starving. You know, you catch lots of small little fish. You'll get. That's the one thing about wet fly fishing. I'll have to bring this into it, is you will meet, without exaggeration, you'll meet 7 trout to catch one. You'll get bangs and you'll get hits and you'll be doing a lot of cursing and why didn't he stay on, and they'll fall off. But you will find them. But, you know, the rod will always be bending, you know. So, yeah, it's good for the young fellas. Yeah, it's a great way to get them going, no doubt.
When I was listening to you, when you were talking to George, you said a very interesting thing. You said that you found that the wet fly is probably more successful in Ireland than it is abroad.
Yeah, it is. Like you have wild trout in Ireland. Abroad, there's some countries abroad you're only allowed to fish one fly. Like Slovenia would be one of my favorite. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places to go. I go there a lot, but it's a one fly country. So one wet fly it just doesn't make a lot of sense, you know. And there's most of the rivers out abroad on the main, you know, the continent would be stocked fish. They're heavily stocked. Whereas the Irish wild trout, they're natural feeders. You know, they're feeding on natural flies. So that's what we tend to tie up as natural flies, and we fish natural flies. So that's probably why they work better in Ireland. No, don't get me wrong. I've had great fishing abroad on wet flies in Poland and the Seine. I remember I was there one time with John Hart, and he had 2 black pennels on, and there was French guys. They were just couldn't unbelieve. They were coming up. They wanted black pennels. We had a great laugh. They couldn't catch anything, and we were catching them with black pennels.
Just when you were talking about the Awbeg there, and the nature of the river, like when you think back of it, so like when you weren't nymphing, and a lot of the stretches weren't conducive to wet fly fishing, and you weren't dry fly fishing, a lot of the fish were safe in it then.
Well, they were, but it was just back in the day, there was a lot more fellas. Like the river, the Awbeg now is very closed in, extremely closed in. It's like a tunnel. But back when I was, you know, I'm going back, unfortunately, I go back 40, 45 years ago, there was loads of fellas fishing. Every guy that went fishing would bring a slasher with him. He'd bring a saw or someone, or billhook, or and everyone had their own place cut. And we didn't even have body waders. We just had Wellingtons. We didn't even have toy waders. But there was plenty of fishing. Plus, the cattle back then could graze up to the banks and they could eat their way in. Whereas now, that's not allowed anymore. Just not to be said for the way things were done long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, forget that. That was a huge difference there because there's boundaries now and boundary fences. Of course, that wasn't in it years ago.
No, no. Whereas, yeah, I mean, cattle were in the river. It was for and against. Scientists will say they shouldn't be in there, but God, I have no problem with seeing cattle in the river. They don't seem to bother me, But they always didn't. The fishing was great back then. Maybe, people say like the Funcheon River, as good as it is, it was known as a very polluted river. It had a lot of pig farms and stuff like that back in the day when.
Because I remember being as a little child, my dad coming back from Taffy meeting and telling me about the Funcheon River, that there was this beautiful river. That was my first time ever been told about it. A beautiful river with beautiful fish, but it's getting polluted by a factory. I remember him telling me that. And I think he mentioned Eamon Nelligan's name, that he must have been on the council as well with them and telling them that. So that was my first ever mention of it. It was the first time pollution was, we didn't hear about it this is back in the 70s. And it was the first time I'd heard about pollution. It was the Funcheon and then consequently Loch Sheenan. But first mention I'd heard of it was that the river was been polluted in the Funcheon. So, but it's come back though.
Oh, it's come back. Yeah, but look, nature is great. I mean, if a river gets polluted, it looks very bad. There could be thousands of fish killed, but, fish migrate around and it recovers quick.
That's the incredible thing about the trout, isn't it? The brown trout, how they can just survive and thrive in almost all conditions.
Yeah, they're a hardy species. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, they've gone through a lot.
Just go back to the wet fly, because I'm absolutely fascinated. And I think, in fairness, do you think nymphing has taken over in the sense of fellas will just do that as their first resort, kind of when they come to a river, that it's easier to do, or they know they'll catch fish? What I'm saying is wet fly doesn't seem to be on the horizon for as many people, whereas maybe it should be.
Well, the thing about the wet fly is back in the day when, from when I learned to wet fly fish, we kind of did everything with maybe a competition in mind. And the way we ran our competitions back then was you start at one bridge and you finish at another bridge. It could be 3 miles between the bridge. So you were kind of running up and down the river with your wet flies, running to all the good spots. Now, and the thing about wet flies, you won't get a lot of fish in one place. Whereas nowadays with nymphing, you can literally stand in a stream without moving your feet and catch fish after fish after fish. That won't happen with a wet fly. Like wet fly, you have to be on the move. You have to take a cast, take a step. Salmon fly fishing is kind of the same. Take a cast, take a couple of steps, keep moving, keep covering the water. Whereas nymphing, you can stand behind a bridge for the whole day and catch fish. So I can see the attraction to nymphing. But again, wet fly fishing, it's just, it can be frustrating probably to younger guys getting tangles. You get a lot of tangles, starting off. But, it goes, it's just the joys.
It's a slower, more relaxed type of fishing as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is. It is. I mean, evening fishing is fine. If you go down there around 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and a nice little rise comes on, and you're standing there, and it's a nice warm evening, and you can catch, it's not all about catching fish either, as you said. You can relax and do it. And, it's a lovely, I'd be ashamed if the art of casting leaves us. We would, I know we're doing a lot of nymphing, but equal to that, dry dropper fishing is probably just as popular now, and at least with the dry dropper fishing, there's an element of dry fly fishing casting, whereas the nymphing is just, like George McGrath would say, you're just lobbing it out there. And look, there's more to it than that. I'm sure George was taking the mick a little bit when he mentioned it, but he's right. It's you can learn to nymph very easily. If you get into, I could take a first timer to the Funcheon, If a guy that never picked up a rod in his life, I could take him to the function, and I can promise you, I could have him catching 20, 25 fish in a couple of hours. But it's just that type of river, and the method is so good there.
Well, I'm glad to see the wet fly hasn't completely died off.
No. As I said, you're in the right neck of the woods for the wet fly angler, all right. I think I think up around Wicklow, all right. And the Avonmore River, that was always known as well for wet fly spider fishing. I go to the Dee in Wales a lot, and that's they do a lot of spider fishing there. It's a great river on the grayling and brownies for spiders are they're second out there, probably to the nymphing again, but there's more wet fly fishermen out there than you think.
What's your favorite method of dry dropper, dries, wet fly, nymphing, or streamer fishing?
Yeah,
there's five or so there.
I'd have to say dry fly fishing. I just love dry fly fishing. I mean, you won't catch as near as many fish as you will. Probably, I tell you now, dry dropper fishing. I'm dry dropper fishing maybe 15 years, 20 years now. And I fish with Sean Maher there now a lot. And you think that dry dropper fishing is kind of like when you do it, you do it. But there's different levels of dry dropper fishing. It's not as easy as just trying it up there. You have to really figure out depths and from anything from having your nymph literally 6 inches under your dry fly to 6 feet. So you have to find that there's a lot to dry dropper fishing, and it's very intriguing. But in that order, my number one would probably be I love dry fly fishing. I love wet fly fishing, but it can be very frustrating for the amount of fish you meet to the percentage what you land. It can be very frustrating, and you can get caught up in it. You can say, if I get the fly right, if I figure out why they're not, but you'll be better off maybe doing something else sometimes. And what I do like about wet fly fishing as well is you can cast to where you probably can't wade. If the water was too deep in front of you and there's trout rising in the far bank, you can put out 60, 70 feet and cover them, but you're not going to cover them any other way.
Well, Dave, it sounds like you've had the best of both worlds, or the best of all worlds with the Funcheon. Between you can start off with a wet fly and then you move on to the summer, the dries, and a bit of nymphing in between as well. That, of course, you've obviously done a lot of fishing. You've how many international caps?
Oh, I got a couple more coming up. I've been I was lucky at the start. I started, like as I said, my buddy Shani he got me nymphing, he got me doing things, and I kind of met a few Irish teams back in the day when no one else was doing things that I was doing. I went abroad and I learnt a lot about nymphing and stuff like that. So I'd come back to Ireland and I was kind of making Irish teams by doing things that other fellas didn't know. So yeah, I've been lucky. I've been around the world now, all over the world more than once. And for the coming year now, for my sins, I'm going to the Czech Republic in the World Masters in May, and I'm on the European Championship team in Poland in August, September. So I got a busier ahead, and of course I have to get two recce trips as well. Better not talk too loud. My wife is listening, but no. So that keeps me busy, and I love it. I love traveling anyway. I love traveling. I love seeing the world, and to be able to fish while I'm out there is, and I get a lot of international friends as well, and I like to meet up with them. We got some great friends, all over the world, and it's nice to meet up, and they come to Ireland now and again as well, and it's a great sport. People don't realise how. I think it was in Kentucky there a few years ago. They had classes for the elderly and how to fish. I'm not sure how it fished up, but I remember Tom Mankertel was telling me that, they were getting pensioners down teaching them how to fish, and it was brilliant. It was great, and I don't know, it could be still happening. I don't know, but we're on about our youth. But it was great for the pensioners to go down, and they had their bit of fun on the bank of the river, and they caught a couple, and they probably didn't care as long as they were out. Yeah,
it's one of the few sports, isn't it, that you get to be out in these most beautiful places.
Oh my God, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's remarkable, actually, Dave. You said, you've fished all over the world, you've done competitions, you've internationals, you've seen some of the best places, you go on your trips, and yet when all is said and done, the Funcheon is still as special.
I have to go back to When my uncle, when I was only a little grasshopper, he used to take me down with the worm and with the sit down with the bamboo, and that was how I learned it. That's why I first went to the Funcheon, and then I remember one day I bought some flies and stuck them on my spinning rod with a bubble and caught a fish, and just went fly fish mad then after that. But everyone did it. After school, we all went fishing after school, but no one does that anymore.
On opening day now, like one time you probably would have seen a lot of guys out on the river. Will you bump into many guys now the next day?
Not really, no. I'd probably meet Tommy Lane the opening morning, to get my fishing permit, my local club license off of him, up in Masterclass. There could be a few guys up there, but we'll spread out. But we'll have a little chat, and but you won't tend to meet. As I say, I mean, everyone has their own little corner to go to, and they all have their own favourite spots, and we all tend to let each other go to where they want to be. Rock Mills now would be one of my favourite spots, and not many will go there. Not the opening day anyway. There won't be 6 or 7 guys out. That'll be all. Especially if it falls on the Wednesday. The opening day, I think, it's midweek anyway, I think so.
It is. It's midweek this year, yeah.
Yeah. So there won't be too many out, no.
And just out of interest, Dave, how many times did you get out during the season? Like, would you be out every other day, kind of every?
Yeah, I would know. Yeah.
Come hail, rain or shine, like.
Yeah, I keep a diary there. I've looked. Yeah, I could get out every day, but the lads will tell you there now. I mean, I'd be little and often. I could go to the Funcheon. I could be here tying a fly or something like that. I say, I must try that one out. And I'd be at the river. My rod is always together on the Jeep, so it's just a case of trying the boots and go. But 2 hours and I could be home again. But I could do that every day. Yeah. Unless I'm practicing for something big, I kind of stay out for the whole day.
Yeah. You're not making anybody jealous with saying that now at all, Dave. Not at all. Nobody's listening.
This is tight, Tom. I'd say no. I'd be still hanging behind you. I'd say you get out as often as I would somehow.
I don't know. We'll have to discuss further. Come here, Dave. Before we go there, it's been great talking to you, but we're going to ask you a question, and you haven't been forewarned on this one, I don't think, so you're going to have to think it on the spot. But we ask everybody who comes on the show what their most memorable fish has been on the fly. So what has been Dave O'Donovan's most memorable fish on the fly?
That story, it's one of my fishing stories. I actually told it to George McGrath and the podcast with him. I got to tell you this one as well in case the other people haven't seen it. I was fishing in Munster Championships, and with a snipe and purple, I was catching lots of fish, and I hooked a nice fish. It wasn't a particularly big fish. It was, maybe a 3/4 of a pound, for a nice river fish. And where I was fishing, I had to slide him. I was kind of up on a high bank, and I had to slide him onto a ledge down underneath me. Every time I had maybe 10 fish caught at the time, and I'd slide them onto the ledge beneath me, and I jumped down onto the ledge then and dispatched them back then. It was way back in the day. But I was just sliding this one particular fish onto the bank, and my tail wet fly was still in the water, and on comes a little salmon pair and pulls the fly out of the main, the good trout, and the good trout got away. And it was a Munster Championships, and Tommy Lane beat me by one fish. And I'll always remember that one trout, getting away like that. But I'm not one for big trout. Like, we don't have big trout down here. I know you might be in a rush, but believe it or not, my biggest trout on the Blackwater, and the Blackwater holds big trout, but they're very seldom caught. But my biggest trout in the Blackwater is only 1.12 pounds. For someone that's on the river a lot, my biggest on the Awbeg would only be maybe a pound. I've caught don't ask me how many trout I've caught in the function. I mean, I couldn't put a number on it. My biggest trout on the function would probably be 1.25 pounds. You know, so the shore, I've had some good trout in the shore. I went out, oh yeah, that would be a good story. I went out to the shore one day and I caught 2 trout all day. Fishing was very bad. I caught 2 trout for the day. One was 3.12 and the other was 3.11. So
Right.
I'll always remember those 2 trout as well.
Not bad.
Was that on prize?
Yeah. No names. names.
Good man.
No, I had to tell. Pheasant's tail gold bead.
Where were you fishing actually? What stretch was that?
Dragon slip.
That's one of my favourite spots.
Dragon slip. Yeah.
It's actually, do you know what? I only meet Cork lads fishing that stretch for some. You're going on about the tip lads.
Yeah, well, the shore lads, they know all the hot spots. So we're kind of left to the mediocre spots. So a place you can drive to and park easily, and but it's just great fishing there. Dragon slip is well, I like there.
It's one of my local spots. I love going to as well. And it's funny actually. Last season, I remember I met a Cork lad actually there, and he was shocked that he met somebody else. He's like, I've been fishing here for the last 3 months, and you're the first person I've come across. Like,
yeah. Well, no, Dragon slip would be popular with the Cork lads, right? And then some of the, we say not the local Care lads, no, but there's a few Tipperary lads that wouldn't be from Care, if you know what I mean. They'd go there fairly often, yeah.
Some great fishing down there. Well, I tell you what, I'll have to make a visit down to the Funcheon now. Repay the favour.
You have my number now. Just be on. I will do wet fly fishing, or if you want a bit of salmon fishing, I have a piece of the Blackwater upriver of Mallow. If you ever want to do a bit of salmon
fabulous.
fishing, yeah.
And do you do much on that stretch there on the Blackwater for the salmon?
Not really. We were syndicate on it for 3 days of the week, and I just kind of kept it for myself in my old age, my retiring. Just it's a nice system. Nice. It's a mile long and just some nice streams in it. Salmon fishing has gone back. It's a shame, but there's a few. We had a few numbers off it last year, but it's there's some good ones in May. If you can get a bit of high water in May or June, you can get some nice salmon up there. Yeah.
But it's funny actually for me. Like the shore is 7 minutes down the road from me, and if I want to get out for an hour or two and get a bend in the rod and have a fish on the other end, that's the brilliant thing about brown trout fishing on the shore, that you can catch fish. Whereas the salmon for the Blackwater, actually I heard an interesting stat. Actually, somebody said that they reckon nowadays you have to go out to catch one salmon, you have to be out fishing 30 times.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah, it's gone very bad. I mean, there was a time it's gone way back. Yeah, but then you can be lucky then and get 2 or 3 in one day. But that's when there's a run. Yeah, exactly. But it's unfortunate because I remember back in the day, there was salmon everywhere. It was just easy.
Actually, did you ever get bitten by the bug, and did you end up a couple of seasons going mad after them?
Oh, way back. When there was good runs, I gave up salmon fishing almost 25 years ago, just because I kind of concentrated in competition trout fishing, and I just gave up salmon fishing. But the last, I bought the stretch of the Blackwater about nearly 4 years ago now. So when there's a run, I go out. If the lads tell me there's a few salmon gone up, I put the rod up, I go up. And I'm after getting a few, nothing major, but I'd still be up on that stretch, and I'd be salmon fishing. I'd see a trout rising, and I'd have to put the salmon rod away and go trout fishing. So the trout comes first.
Yeah.
Thank God for the trout.
Yep. There's 2 against 1 here, Dara. Trout are with it tonight.
No problem. Doff my cap to it. No problem. Dave Donovan, thanks a million for joining us. It's been brilliant chatting to you. Or the resurgence of wet fly. I'm definitely actually now going to start that now. The couple of weeks that we're coming up to the start of the season. You've whetted my appetite for it. So thanks a million for joining us, and tight lines for the season.
Thank you, Dara. See you, Tom. God bless.
Our thanks to Dave O'Donovan for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. Advice on tactics and how to catch more fish are the most common requests we get from listeners to Ireland on the Fly, and so this year we're delighted to bring you our new monthly Masterclass live webinars.
Some of the most experienced and respected fly anglers from around the country will pass on their in-depth knowledge and expertise in a live Zoom webinar where you will get to ask the questions and get the answers that you've always wanted to know.
So, starting with our first Masterclass live webinar on Thursday, March 14th, international angler and lock carb expert Mike Keady will be explaining early season buzzer tactics.
What's the setup, what flies to use, and how to maximize your catch rates. All of this and more, Mike Keady will be explaining.
Plus, he will then be answering your questions live during the webinar.
And if that's not enough, every attendee will get a copy of Mike's detailed notes and have exclusive access to the recording of the webinar afterwards.
And for all of this, tickets to the webinar are just €10. To attend, you must register and pay in advance by going to irelandonthefly.com/masterclass.
Stay tuned for our masterclasses throughout 2024. We'll be covering salmon, rivers, lochs, streamers, lures, and dries. Everything to make you a better salmon or trout fly angler, helping you to catch more this year and to learn from the best.
Don't forget the date and details. Thursday, March 14th with Mike Keady on early season buzzer tactics. Register and pay for your ticket at irelandonthefly.com/masterclass, and we can't wait to see you then.